Hello everyone and welcome to the November RELO Andes webinar. For those of you unfamiliar with the RELO department, it is the Regional English Language Office. It is run out of the U.S. Embassy here in Lima, Peru. The RELO office is in charge of all things having to do with English language, particularly in supporting teachers in the classroom when teaching English. So my name is Maggie Steingraber. I am an English language fellow based here in Lima, Peru. I am hosting and organizing the webinars, so I'm sure you've been in communication with me in registration and if you've participated in other webinars with us. The software that we're using for this webinar, in case you're new to webinars, is Citrix GoToWebinar. If you're with us today, that means you've successfully registered and you have surely received an email from this software about the download, all that. So I'll run through very quickly before we begin about how you can interact with us through this webinar. This webinar is a little different than other webinars that we've done. For this one, we have an expert panel. So instead of having one presenter on one topic, we have 3 different experts who are going to be talking on 4 different topics. So throughout the webinar, please feel free to participate. You can add in comments, ask questions. We're relying on you for the feedback for this one. So first, this is your control panel. You should see this on the side of your screen. If it bothers you, you can click on this orange arrow to either collapse or expand it if you don't want to look at it. Your microphone is muted, and you will remain muted throughout the presentation. There are a couple different tools. There we go, now you can see it. There are a couple different tools that you can use when we're interacting. So I want to run through those just so you can practice using them now. So the first one is the chat box. This works like in any other chat on social media that you might find. I think it comes up as questions. You can type something in here if you have a question or a comment throughout. So just for the practice now, if you can find your question box, then just type in a quick hello to us just so we know that you found it. We have Marco from Piura, hello. Christian from Lima. Jonathan from Monaco, hello. Lorna, Marco, all right. Rosario, we see you. Maria Elena, Monica from Argentina. Gabby, hello Gabby. All right. Viveka from Bolivia. Excellent. All right, looks like a lot of you have found it. Excellent. Okay. So the next tool that we have, which we may use this throughout, is hand raising. It's meant to work like a regular classroom. So throughout the webinar, we might just take a quick poll of people to see what their experience is with a certain subject. It is the tool that looks just like this, that looks like a little hand going up. So if you found that, please raise your hand just so we know that you found it. All right, about 35% of you have found it. Good, going up. All right, excellent. So throughout we might ask you just to raise your hand, just if we want to take a quick poll. So that's all we mean, is just to hit that button so that we know that you're out there. The next is a poll. There are polls throughout the webinar just so that we can get a little feedback and learn a little bit more about you. So this first poll that we're going to do is just a test to see that you can use the polls and that the polls are working. So the first poll, we just want to know, what topic are you most looking forward to? We have 4 different topics that we're going to discuss with our experts today. The first is on class planning and methodology. The second is on learner differences. The third is on materials and resources. And the fourth on assessment. So click which one or which ones, you can click more than one, are you most looking forward to us talking about today. And you can click right on your screen, whichever one you think is the most interesting for you. We've got about 50% of you have voted, going up to 70. So I'll leave it open now for another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, One last chance to get a vote in, and we'll close it out. All right, looks like the topic that most of you are interested in is materials and resources, 63%, followed by assessment, 58%, classroom planning, 54%, and learner differences, still important, but 38% of you said it was the topic you're most looking forward to. All right, great. There'll be polls throughout, so look for those and let us know what you're thinking. Handouts, there are no handouts for this webinar. There won't be anything to share. Other ones there will be. At the very end, there is a survey. So when you log out, a survey will come up. It's only 2 questions, and it's to help us to understand better who you are, if you're watching this with other people, or where you are joining us from. So please take 2 seconds at the end to answer that, and it helps us out a lot. All right, so with that said, we will begin with the expert panel. So I'll begin by introducing our first expert, Lisa Mann. Hello, Lisa.
Hi. So my name is Lisa Mann. I am also an English language fellow. I'm currently working here in Lima with the Regional English Language Office at the United States Embassy. This is my second fellowship. Last year I was in Piura, and I see a lot of my friends from Piura here have joined us today. Hi, guys. It's nice to see some familiar names there. So yes, I'm here, like all English language fellows, to support the English teaching community in our region, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Lisa. The next expert is Karina Garcia. Hello, Karina.
Hi, Maje. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you, sharing this webinar with all of you. I'm Karina Garcia. I come from the Amazon, from Iquitos, where I worked training prospective language teachers in English and French at the National University of the Peruvian Amazon. And now I'm working at the Regional English Language Office. I'm very, very happy to be here with you. Welcome you all.
And last but not least, William Machaca.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Lisa and Karina. It's really nice to be here. My name is William Machaca. I work at the Ministry of Education in Peru for the initial training department for the pre-service teaching department, teacher training department. And well, I've worked as an English teacher for a very long time, and I am also glad to see some people in the list that were at Pedagógicos in Peru.
Yes, I saw a couple as well.
I can see some names there. Gabby's one of them.
I saw
Gabby
Jonathan too.
Jonathan too. Well, ready for this.
Excellent. All right. So the first topic that we have is on class planning and strategies and methodologies to use in the class. So just to introduce the topic, let's take a poll very quickly to just see how confident are you when you're planning your classes? Extremely confident, mostly confident, confident, somewhat confident, or not confident at all? Please help. Okay. About half people have voted. Click on which one you think. How confident are you in your course planning? All right. We got about 70%, so I'll leave it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and close and share. So, looks like most people feel mostly confident. No one is at a 0, no confidence at all. So that's a good thing. So we're not starting from 0. All right. So the first questions are on planning. We'll find them. All right. So planning. The first question that came in was about how to make classes dynamic, particularly in rural areas, as opposed to urban areas, which provide a very different setting. Karina, would you like to begin with this one?
Sí, Thank you very much for the question. Teaching in rural areas is completely different to teaching in urban areas. I think that the students need to be considered in every class in terms of where they come from, what their background is. It's not the same like teaching in urban areas where students are exposed to different contexts and their background is completely different comparing to the kids in rural areas. So what we have to do is take the students' environment, take what they have in their real context to prepare our classes, similar to the kids that live in urban areas. Once we take into account the students' previous knowledge, their background, the way they live, where they live, and how they live, we will have successful classes. The teachers should always know that the students are the ones who are the most important person in the classroom. So their requirements, their previous knowledge, their needs, their expectations, and also their individual factors should be considered when preparing every class. Once we consider all those issues, I think that every class will be successful.
Thank you. Anything to add?
No, not
No,
really.
a very solid answer. Nicely done. All right. Another question that came in was on how to integrate thinking skills into language teaching. Lisa?
This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately because I'm giving a short presentation this weekend on critical and creative thinking in the classroom. And one of the studies that I read that I found really, really interesting was done in the United States and in adult education, ESL. And what the researchers did were they set up a lot of different activity types, and then they recorded their students doing those activities, and then they categorized the things they talked about using Bloom's taxonomy, which is that pyramid I'm sure you've all seen that categorizes uh, thinking skills from lower level to higher level thinking skills. And interestingly, one of the most one of the types of activities that produce the most higher level thinking skills were case studies. How many? Can we just do a little poll? How many of you have used case studies with your students? That's when you give them a little situation with a problem and they have to talk together to solve the problem. Okay. Raise your hands, please, if you've used a case study with your classes.
Very few people. William, is that a hand? William has a hand. We'll add that in.
Well, I would just like to add that most of the times we think that higher order thinking skills are levels of knowledge that should be addressed at the very end of the student's education, but we commonly make a mistake by thinking like that. I think that critical thinking skills should be incorporated in our everyday lessons ever since we have little kids, and there are different activities, very simple activities that can promote the development of them. Even like when we have a reading, let's say the Little Red Riding Hood. Instead of asking students to retrieve information that is explicit in the text, we can ask them if some hypothetical questions like, what would you have done if you had been this, or why do you think the Little Red Riding Hood took this route instead of the other one, or questions like that. I mean,
Yeah.
very simple materials at young age can be exploited to develop those critical thinking skills.
And that's the wonderful thing about case studies as well. Like the study that I'm talking about, they were using this with pre-intermediate learners, so they weren't advanced English speakers. The language that they were using was not necessarily very sophisticated or complex, but the ideas that they were coming up with and the kind of thinking they were doing in order to solve the case, to solve the problem, those were complex, and that is higher level thinking. So William's absolutely right. It doesn't have to be something for fifth level university students, you can start introducing critical thinking into the English language classroom from the very beginning, from little children. Yeah.
And I would also like to say that using critical thinking skills in the classroom at all levels, it's not only for the English classroom or for the classroom itself. If we incorporate critical thinking skills in the classroom, we will also help our learners to become citizens, to be more creative in life, to be able to solve problems. And if people are creative and if they are able to solve problems in the real life, they will be happier in their personal lives and professional lives too. So that would be a good point to consider in any program, in any educational program all over the world. The key from my point of view, it is to incorporate critical thinking skills for real life.
It's cross-disciplinary, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maria del Rosario makes the point of using more problem-solving skills and giving them easy solutions, being able to solve their own problems and create their own solutions. Another question that's come up is on the lesson planning format. If there's a certain structure to follow with lesson planning, how you go about planning your lessons. Lisa?
If you look for examples of lesson plans in Google, you will find thousands. There are as many lesson plan formats as you can imagine. The point is, I think, to find something that works for you and that includes all of the things that you need to think about in your lessons. Lots of the lesson plans I've seen here in Peru have just 3 big parts, and although that might work for non-English classes, I think when you're planning an English class, you need to break it down into individual activities. And to make your classes dynamic and engaging, you need lots of little activities, right? So it's good to just think about every moment of the class that you're planning for and what you're going to be doing, but also what your students are going to be doing. Yeah, think about it from both perspectives and write everything down. You never know. Once you have some years behind you and some experience behind you, your lesson plans will probably be shorter and less complex, but there's nothing wrong with over planning, especially when you're a new teacher.
Something I would like to add to build on what Lisa just said is that there are some essential parts to lesson planning, even though there are lots of options in terms of templates and formats. One element that should always be there is a clear goal stated. I think that should be the very beginning of a nice lesson plan. Nice in terms that the lesson plan is an instrument that helps you attain certain results out of the class period that you share with your students, making sure that the whole time that you spend with them and the activities that you propose would allow students to develop some language skills. And together with a clear goal, we should also state some way to assess what the results of those activities are. Contrary to what used to happen in the past, when I started teaching back in the last millennium, we took pride on being teachers who organized like the most dynamic and beautiful activities, and sometimes we didn't have any clear idea on where we wanted our students to go.
Yeah.
So we were just great designers of classroom activities, but there was no clear purpose of the session itself. So I think that something that should always be present in a lesson plan is a clear goal and a way to assess the results of that lesson.
Can I just jump in here, because William is absolutely right, and I think part of the benefit of writing a relatively detailed lesson plan is that you can see the progression of your class working towards that objective that you've already determined, right? So you can see, you can look at every single activity, everything that you've planned, and ask yourself along the way, does this make sense for the objective that I've set for my students? And does this follow on to the next thing I'm doing and the next thing? Is there a gradual progression, and is that progression leading towards the objective that I've set? So yeah, writing it down helps a lot. And sometimes you think, oh, I've done this lesson before, I'll just keep it in my mind. But writing it down really clarifies what you want to do.
I would like also to consider one aspect that is very important, especially for non-experienced teachers. They want to follow a format. As Lisa said, there are so many formats that you can find on the internet or from your teachers, from wherever. But one thing that we have to take into account when preparing our class, it is that we start with a warm-up activity, but then we forget that the motivation should be during the whole class. And also we have to take into account that reflection, metacognition is part of the class, not only at the end of the class, but in every step of the classroom. If we use our lesson plans to achieve a goal or to help our learners to become reflective practitioners, that will be a good asset for them, not only for the class, but also, or not only for having meaningful classes, but also for having students who will be ready to use that knowledge into real life. So that class will become useful and meaningful in real life. And another thing it is that feedback is also a very important aspect in planning a class. It's not only ending with the assessment, but also taking some minutes to reflect and then to offer feedback to the students would be a great point to have a successful class.
One more question has come up while you guys have been talking on timing. And if timing should be something that you should put into your lesson plan, and how to deal with unexpected changes that come up if you would say plan an activity for 5 minutes and it went for 10, for example.
That's one of the things that I always talked with my learners when I was a teacher trainer in the Amazon. It is that we can include time for maybe ordering your lesson plan, but if there are some things that are necessary to change, I think the flexibility of any lesson plan is also very important. The most important thing, it is not how much or the quantity of knowledge you give to your learners, but also it is the quality. If it's necessary to stop your class and talk about other aspects which are maybe not part of your class, but maybe would help your learners to become better people, or maybe to solve a problem in terms of behavior, and that would be your role. Your role as a teacher would be very important and crucial. So the flexibility of a lesson plan is also a very important issue to consider from my point of view.
Absolutely, yeah. And on the other side, one thing is if your individual activities take longer than you expected, which is part of the flexibility you're talking about. Sometimes they take less time. So,
Yes.
having something up your sleeve is also a good idea, to have a plan B in case you have that extra 10 or 15 minutes left at the end and you go, uh-oh, what are we going to do?
Yeah. I think, yeah, you're right, Lisa. I think we learn to manage the art of the unexpected. Over the years, we learned that a lesson plan is one means, one instrument that can help us like map what we plan to do, which will not necessarily result in classroom situation. And that, again, as Karina said, we have to be flexible enough to think that and to adapt during the lesson and maybe extend some activities according to the needs that appear during the session or the constraints that we come across during the development of the class, right?
Sure.
Okay. All right, then I think that about ends it for our session on planning. So we'll move on to learner differences. So again,
can I say a last word
absolutely.
before we close this planning part?
Absolutely.
And I guess most of us have worked on the administration of different programs, and I think that from the teaching perspective and the administration perspective, there are things that we have to agree on, and we have to agree on the fact that a lesson plan is not a pure administrative document, that it is not a paper that the coordinators or supervisors should go and check just the format, or if it has the teacher's name and the date, and that is not the purpose of a lesson plan.
Yeah.
But a lesson plan is something that we use to produce learning, to help our students develop their language skills. And as long as we have something that will be used in class, that's fine. I have worked in different settings where the lesson plan is only used for the administrative level of supervision, and I think that is another dimension of this analysis that we should not lose sight of. That the lesson plan should be used as a pedagogical tool and not as an administrative one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there have been a couple comments. Both Marco and Rosario both commented on their institutes, or in the case of the government, asking for the lesson plan. So there is the administrative side that institutes and administration wants to see it, but it is also a pedagogical tool, meaning to help you in the classroom. All right, so with that last point, we're going to switch on to learner differences. So just to introduce the topic, let's just take a quick poll from you on which learner differences do you struggle the most with to accommodate in your classroom. So choose the one that you find to be the most challenging. Is it multiple proficiency levels in the classroom, the age of your learners, accommodating different learning styles and preferences, interest and motivation of the students, or is there some other aspect that we're missing on the list that you find to be the most challenging in overcoming with learner differences? So we'll leave this poll open for just another couple seconds. If you can click on which of these aspects do you find to be the most challenging to work with. And we've got about half the people have voted, so we'll just leave it open for a little bit longer so we can get to questions. Another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll close it and show you the results. So it seems like multiple proficiency levels within the class seems to be the most challenging for people at 41%. Another 30% struggle with interest and motivation, then accommodating different learning styles at 26%, and 4% said that age tended to be something that they struggled with. So with that idea of multiple proficiency levels, since that's the most popular, maybe we can throw that to the expert panel on how to accommodate multiple proficiency levels in the classroom. What are some strategies that you would use for students who have different levels?
Well, I think if we go back to Karina's brilliant answer about being flexible in our lesson plans, and depending a little bit on how your classroom is made up, if there are a group of 2 or 3 students who are have a much higher level than everyone else. If there's just one person, it gets a little bit difficult. You could always sort of enlist that person to be your assistant, the person with the highest level. But if you have a small group of students who are who you think have a higher level than everyone else, you can change the timing of your lesson plan to give those students more. For example, if you use a PPP approach, to give those students more production time and less practice time, because they won't need it as much as the others. Yeah. So you just separate them out and move them into a different part of your classroom and give them a slightly higher level activity to do. So you don't have to create 2 whole lesson plans. Nobody's suggesting that you cause yourself that much trouble. But you can change the timing for the different sections of your lesson to accommodate the students with the higher levels, so that they don't get bored with lots of practice of the same expressions and the same language. That's one possible option, but there are other ones. Maybe you have something to say, William?
That just brings back some memories from my teaching experience. I was once introduced a monitor model teaching method that consisted of having like the best performers be the leaders in different working stations within a classroom, and that really helped because it added challenge to those students who knew a little bit more than the other ones and assigned responsibility in them, and in order to help to the other students, like following the the cooperative approach with students at different performance levels doing things that are different in terms of demands, but which also guarantee a sense of achievement when seeing the group product. So I think that is a nice way to address this issue of different levels within a classroom, like to organize cooperative work activities where the ones who know the most can be challenged to add to what the other ones do and help them achieve results.
It makes those students feel really good too, to know that they are playing a role in their classmates' success. Yeah, so it's encouraging and motivating for them as well. Yeah.
and and also encourages the weak students, not only the strong students. The ones who are the weak students, they want to be like the strong ones. They want to be the stars in the classroom. So, and they sometimes feel more motivated to enter to language centers and to study English harder, because they say, Miss, I want to be also the monitor of my group. So we have to push our learners to learn English and to see that English will give them more opportunities of participating more in the classroom or monitoring groups. Or this is also a good way of, as William said, developing cooperative language learning. And I think it works. For me, it worked a lot when I was a teacher, and having the best students, the more proficient students leading groups or being the monitors of my class gave the others the opportunity to feel more motivated to be also the stars of the classroom.
Rosario has a question on if you would recommend giving some kind of a survey before the class in order to find out a little more about your learners before the class begins. I guess like a needs assessment.
Yeah, at the very beginning of the semester, of the very beginning of a class, I think every teacher should know about their students' background, their students' previous knowledge, how much they know about English, because every year we change our learners depending if we teach at universities or at schools. It's necessary to know. Also, this survey, I consider it's very important, not only to know about the students' level of proficiency, but also their differences, their learning styles, and the type of learners they are. Some of them are visual, some of them are kinesthetic. Once we know who our students are, we will be able to prepare successful classes and to have all the students ready and happy in our classes, because all of them will be considered when preparing the activities for the classroom.
Yes, and depending on their level, that survey that can be incorporated into your first week in your community building activities that you do to sort of create a sense of comfort in your classroom and get your students to know each other. They can interview each other and find out about each other and report back about each other. So yes, it's definitely a good idea. Yeah.
And I know that we will reach the assessment part in a minute, but I mean, being this survey tool also to assess the entry, the intake that you have in your class, in order to see the levels of progress along the course. I guess it is essential to do that. It's not only a good idea, but it is also essential to have a clear picture of how far you are getting in terms of achievement.
And moving from the topic of level to motivation, there are several questions on what you can do to motivate students who don't want to learn the language. So how do you increase motivation?
How to increase motivation? Karina wants to do it. She's more motivated.
Yes, I'm so motivated. I think the first issue that we have to take into account when motivating our learners, it is the teacher itself. The teachers inspire other people to learn English. If the teacher is a competent one, if the teacher is always motivated, if the teacher shows that he has passion for what he does, for teaching, for doing the activities with the classroom, if the teacher shows the students that he loves what he or she does, that will be the first step to motivate our learners. If the teacher is a successful teacher, the students would definitely love to be like the teacher. So I think the main point for motivating our learners is not only thinking about your activities in the classroom, but it's also about you, who you are in the classroom and what you do with them and how you inspire learners to become maybe in the future language teachers like you.
Mm-hmm. That was an excellent answer.
Well, I guess another
No more
question.
words to say.
Another question that came from it was from, oh, I just lost it. On what to do. There we go, from Maria Teresa, on what to do if your lesson plans or your curriculum is from the school and the students find it boring. What can you do to adapt something that may be a set curriculum from either a school or an institute in order to make it more interesting and motivating?
I think that all regulations, at least in public institutions, allow teachers to be flexible in the application or in the implementation of a curriculum. So there's always room for contextualization. That should be like a key action in teachers' planning and the implementation of a class. And that is, I mean, the possibility of adapting your class, changing the curriculum in terms of the contents that are proposed in the curriculum will always help you to find some more motivating activities, contents that are more appealing to students, as well as activities that can fulfill the achievement of the goals that you think are the ones that need to be set. Of course, there are constraints in other types of school settings that need to stick to a rather fixed program. But still, even there, I think that there is room for change in terms of content. I will always talk about this lesson reading that I came across for several years in a center where I taught, which was about money issues. And that I found that was a turn off for students, that whenever they came across that reading, they would not go beyond the third line in the text. And the idea was to, I mean, I could feel I was successful when I changed the content itself. I found a reading that was more appealing to students, and then it helped also to achieve the same goals in terms of reading skills and the management of new vocabulary. But I just changed the reading, and that was it. And it was not a lot of work. It was something that I could do, that teachers can do, I think. And that's something that we should always think about, to adapt, to change, to not feel constrained by the contents that the text gives us or that the program gives us. I guess we have the right and also the duty to make the necessary changes to make our classes more motivating to students by changing contents, by adapting them.
And another question comes on learning styles and what you can do to help your students discover their own learning style.
I think the best that we can do to help our learners it is to prepare different types of activities through preparing activities for kinesthetic, for visual, for the different types of learners. You will discover which activities they prefer. And then if you present a variety of activities in your classroom, your learners will tell you, depending on their achievement, what type of learners they are. And one of the things that I noticed, for example, in public schools, it is that teachers who teach in the first grade, from first grade A, from to first grade D, for example, if they have 4 classes, they prepare the same lesson plan for every class. So each class is completely different, and where we have different types of learners, and we should be careful about that. The learners are not the same in all the classrooms, so we have to adapt the lesson plan. As William said, we have to adapt the activities according to their real needs. And also, if we take into account all these aspects, I think we will have happier learners in the English classroom. Once we have happier learners, we as teachers, we will observe what kind of activities they prefer, and they will be able at the end of the school year to say, I prefer these types of activities, and they will discover what type of learners they are.
And this all, of course, ties into motivation, yeah, and
Sure.
using and appealing to lots of different types of learning styles in the classroom is motivating for your students because they are doing things that they know help them learn and that they enjoy doing, and it's one of the key parts of motivation. Not only that they see what they're learning is relevant and interesting and useful for them, but that they enjoy it and that it's fun.
All right, then another issue that's come up from a couple people, both Vanessa and Edberto both brought it up on what to do with large class sizes that are 30, 40 students in one class and how to accommodate all of those all of the different learner differences that you would find in a class that large.
Quite complicated.
Quite complicated. Big question.
But you know, it's like really nice to have Maggie here and to see that she has been using a technique with rotating working stations in class, and I guess I already mentioned that before. That can help cope with those different levels within a class, also with different learning styles, like placing students in different working stations, which can guarantee the effective interaction among students according to their abilities within each group. There might be one person who's in charge of reading, another one in charge of searching for vocabulary. There might be another person who will be the spokesperson of the group, another one who might be doing the graphic work. You know, like working with groups with clearly assigned tasks can help us manage large classrooms which hold different learning styles within it. I think that helps. And Maggie's here, and she has been using that. I was really delighted to see the results there. Probably I have spent a lot of my classroom time with very small groups. In the events that we had with the RELO office English language fellows who are here, we had larger than what I used to have, and I could actually see those techniques applied in large groups, and it was really nice. I am a witness, first-hand witness to that. Yeah.
We've made you a believer.
Yeah.
Then the final question, I think we'll talk with learner differences, has come up on how to address multiple intelligences.
I think we have 9 different intelligences, and we have to address different ones by using different activities in the classroom, taking into account all the learners, all their needs, different possibilities of presenting, and also not only presenting activities, but also taking into account what the students bring to the classroom. So if we have multiple intelligences in the classroom, I think we should address to each one of them, each learner, with all their differences, with their different learning styles, with different rhythm of learning. So if we address to all of them and take into account all the different intelligences, I'm totally sure that we will have a successful classes. And the students will enjoy also the English class, and they would love learning English or learning any language. A teacher who does this, I know it's a very hard work to be a language teacher. So it's a challenge every day when we enter to a classroom and see different students with all these differences. But once we know our learners and we consider all these differences among them, I'm sure that we will have happier learners in our classes.
Great. Thank you. So we'll move on to our third topic, which is on materials. So once again, we'll introduce it with just a quick poll to hear from you on where do you go to find class materials. Do you like to use authentic materials, something you find on TV, radio, internet, movies? Do you bring in realia to the classroom, textbooks? Do you go on the internet to different teacher websites like Busy Teacher, Dave's ESL Cafe, something like that? Or do you have other sources where you go to find your classroom materials? Response is much faster on this one. All right. About half of you have responded. So we'll leave it open for just another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and show you the results. 50% of people go to authentic materials and try to use those. 4% on realia, 14% textbooks, and 32% go to some of the ESL, EFL teacher websites for some pre-made material. All right. So with that on planning, one question has come up on integrating technology into the classroom, and any words that you guys have on any websites that you use, any sort of technology that you can suggest.
I don't know very much about this, but I can say that in the last few years, I've experimented a little bit with having my students use their cell phones. And it can open up a can of worms, we say, which means that is the moment you say, okay, everyone, you can use your phone, everyone starts getting on their chatting with their friends or whatever. But you can use the, since everyone has a cell phone anyway, I think it's an engaging tool to make use of in the classroom. And there are lots of different activities. I think we did a webinar, was it an American English one or a RELO one on cell phone activities? Do you remember, Maggie?
I think it was American English.
American English webinar, which are all on YouTube, since we're talking about materials, which are all on YouTube and free for you to watch at your leisure. There was one on using the cell phone in the classroom, and there were some brilliant ideas, really, really good ones. So, although I am not an expert, and I could probably share a few ideas with you now, I would encourage you to look at some of the American English webinars, which give lots of really useful, practical advice about using technology, and specifically about using cell phones with your students, because they already have it. Yeah, the technology is in place, and it doesn't count on your institution or your school to provide you with the tools you need.
All right.
I would also recommend the use of some word games that you can find online. WordZap or Scrabble, or Buggle online, which has to do with the development of vocabulary. And that can be motivating also to introduce different other writing activities or speaking activities. I guess that is something that can be obtained from what is now not a trend anymore, but that's what we have. That is technology available in class through smartphones or the computers.
I would suggest using the AmericanEnglish.com, which is a very, very interesting webpage where teachers can find lots of information to prepare their classes. But talking about technology, using technology in the classroom, I think we can use cell phones or internet sources, but we have also think of the teachers who do not have access to internet, especially in rural areas, for example, in the Amazon. So the most important thing that we have to do here is the teachers should still keep using their creativity to prepare materials, use realia use different types of elements, still keep using the wall charts, keep using papers, keep using pencil colors. By using technology, by using the internet, or by using wall charts or the traditional materials that we've been using, I think it doesn't matter what material we use. The most important it is that how much our students achieve. If students achieve their learning goals, I think we will be successful teachers.
Can I just say one more thing about using cell phones? I used a cell phone activity with some of my students when I was in Pura, actually. Hi, Pura again. And it was to create a picture dictionary. So they had, this was without having to have the
Yes.
internet. All they had to do was take photos of different things that they saw around our city and name them in English, record their voices to name them in English. And it was very successful, not only because it was engaging, because they're using their phone, but also it got them thinking about English outside of the class.
Yes.
So one of the very, very interesting and motivating things about using cell phones is that you can use them inside the class, but it's also a way to bring the classroom outside and to keep them thinking about and using English when they're not with you. So cell phones are great for that.
That kind of leads into another question on how to create own materials, like a video or a comic, or like what you said, using cell phones to create their own picture dictionary. I don't know if anyone has anything else to expand on teachers creating their own materials.
I think using social net is also a very important tool for the classroom. Students love using Facebook, and let me tell you, once I did an activity with my students, and they prepared a video about their families, and then they uploaded a video on the Facebook, and we shared together, and we were able to add comments or other videos or more ideas and share. And the students really enjoyed working on Facebook, uploading their videos about their families. I think that would be a good tool also to use in the classroom, and also using WhatsApp so that we keep in touch with the learners all the time in and outside the classroom.
Talking about social media, I would like to just mention one activity that I once had with my students with Facebook. Like, probably that goes along the idea of developing critical thinking skills too, is like creating a famous person's profile, a Facebook profile, and also adding some friends that would like move you to think about who their contact names would be if you make one on, say, Oswald, to talk about education. Now you think of the contacts that he could have had, and you make those people their contact friends, and they can create. And you would also ask students to say, what would Piaget say to Oswald in one little post in the Facebook. So that can also help them, like place themselves in a moment, in a place, and generate ideas around that. So,
and those are the higher level thinking skills, applying what we know about the world to a new context, analyzing, evaluating, and creating something new. So absolutely, that's a wonderful
That would be a good tool also to check grammar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the questions were properly written or no, and there would be a good tool for coming to the class and see the questions they asked, if they were well built or no, and then reinforce grammar too.
And peer assessment, which probably brings us to our next topic.
Yeah.
Well, one more thing before we move on to assessment that's come up is any word that you can give on professional development for the teachers and places they can go for their own professional development.
Well, one professional development opportunity that is obvious now are these webinars, the RELO Andes webinars, but also the American English webinars, which are every other Wednesday, I believe. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but you can easily find it on americanenglish.state.gov.
Yes.
And all of the previous webinars are archived in we have our YouTube.
Yeah.
What's the word? A YouTube
Channel.
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 Yes, we have a YouTube channel for American English, so you can go back and find webinars that are specifically address the types of topics that you're interested in. So these are kinds of things that you can do at any time. You can do them at 10 o'clock at night, or 2 o'clock in the morning, or on a Sunday morning when you have a little free time. Another thing are MOOCs. Massive open online courses, which are free and offered by really prestigious universities all over the world. I love MOOCs, and I believe in them wholeheartedly. It's a wonderful way to learn. You do have to have time, and I know a lot of us as teachers, we don't have a lot of time, but you do need to set aside some time to participate in a MOOC, and a lot of them now are offering actually university credit if you pay a certain amount, but they are free if you simply just want to learn and become a better teacher. And I think these are things we can do in our quote free time, so we don't have to schedule a lot of extra things into our already busy days. Anyone else have any ideas?
And just adding to what Lisa said, and perhaps using all those great sources that she already mentioned, maybe create some studying circles within your institutions. And that, I think, would be the perfect scenario in order to not only build community, but grow professionally, individually. Share the materials that you learn from all those sources that Lisa mentioned.
Another good thing that helps a lot for professional development, it is peer observation. You don't need to look for, just talk to one of your colleagues, and if there's something that maybe you feel that you're weak, you're having problems, design a rubric so that your colleague comes to your class and observes you, and then you work together, and then you have feedback and you share information. Maybe your colleague has very interesting advice for you, and it's not just talking about in general, but to a specific point. If you design a rubric together just to see or to assess what aspect you feel you are a little bit weak in terms of teaching, maybe you can work together and share the information. Teachers mostly work behind closed doors, and I think that's not a good idea. We have to start talking to our colleagues and show that we sometimes need help from them because we have more experienced colleagues sometimes, and ask them to come to your classes and observe your classes, and then have a chat and discuss, and maybe next time you do the same with your colleague, and it definitely helps a lot. I suggest you to use peer observation.
Me too. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And as I've observed lots of different classes, and I've gotten so many brilliant ideas and things that you forget that oh yeah, I used to do that. Why did I stop doing that? And it refreshes your memory and makes you a better teacher, and the person you observe as well. Yeah.
And we become reflective practitioners.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And one last thing. I have read that one of the 7 qualities of a total quality professional is to be humble to learn. And that is the beginning of everything. And if we want to work on the basis of peer observation, group cooperation, and team building, I think we should always start by acknowledging that we do not know it all. And that is the beginning of professional development, I think.
Sure.
All right, so it's about 4 o'clock, so we'll do the last one quickly on assessment because I don't want to forget it. So just to introduce the topic, let's just see so far, what kind of assessment tools do you currently use in your practice to assess your students' performance? We have written tests, essays, presentations, projects, checklists, or some other kind of assessment tool. You can check more than one, so check all that apply if you use more than one, or if you rely more heavily on another, then just check that one. All right, we have about 40% of the people have voted. We're short on time, so we'll just leave it open for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close it out. share, and it looks like 79% of people say that they use presentations and projects, which is good to see. 64% rely on written tests, 29 on essays, 32% on checklists, and 7% use some other kind of alternative assessment. So I guess the first question that's come up several times is basically what are some different types of assessment and when is each one appropriate to use? Which is a big question, but just some different examples of some different ways that you could assess your students.
One method, like observation, which would be the most suitable for presentations and projects, I think the best tool, if we're talking about observation, would be the use of rubrics. Even though most, and not most, but many teachers believe it is really hard to implement the use of a rubric, I think that in the end it makes our lives easier, much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, rubrics for presentations and projects, I can't think of another more appropriate way to assess outcomes than a rubric. And one thing that I thought was interesting, someone the other day told me that rubrics that they're all the same. You just download them from the internet and you apply them. Rubrics are not all the same. They are task specific, so you really have to think about what you want. What you want to see and what you're hoping your students have learned and what outcomes you're looking for when you sit down to write a rubric. But you can't, I mean, we're human. We do recycle our projects and our presentations. Yes, once you have the rubric, you can use it again and again, adapt it, make it better, but use it term after term. There's no sense in reinventing wheels. So that's something that rubrics are something that you have to think about, but they are extremely useful for things like presentations, projects, and speaking assessment.
And I think that we have to design the rubrics depending on the students you have. If you teach at university level, you could invite your learners to design the rubrics together. So they should know what aspect they will be assessed during their presentations. So once they know what aspect they will be assessed, they will be ready to understand when they have their final mark, for example, and also be as objective as possible when designing your rubric. In terms of writing or presenting, for example, if you add from 1 to 3 to grammar, for example, you have to be careful about what is 1, what is 2, and what is 3, so that all the students know about the scale, what you are using to assess their presentations. Because if you just consider maybe 2 for grammar or 3 for grammar, you're becoming really, really subjective. So the students will have lots of questions to ask at the end when they have their final mark. But if they know, because they were part of the rubric design, they will know exactly what they did and how they did.
I think that's an important point, is that one of the key things about using a rubric is that everyone receives the rubric before they start to develop their project. Yes, they know exactly what you're looking for.
Sure.
And this goes part of learner training, that you have to train students how to use a rubric, what a rubric is, and what it means, and how to apply the parts of a rubric to their projects so that they can be successful. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and something else, I guess, as you said, it is the rubric must be shared with the students before the whole process starts, so they know what they're expected to do. And against what traditional assessment used to do, just to be given at the very end of the whole process, then it is assessment for learning. No, again, against the traditional assessment of learning. Now, that is what a rubric helps on promote the development of whatever skill you state in your criteria column of the rubric. And so that's the magic of rubrics.
And Karina, I think you touched on this a little bit, but there's a question from Rosa on if it's important to involve the students in creating the rubric that they'll be graded on. Having the students write the criteria of the rubric.
Uh,
Some interesting looks on the panelists' face with this idea.
I don't know. I don't know if it's like crucial or important for students to be part of the design moment. I don't think that is the most important thing. I think what matters the most is that students get to know what the criteria are and
Yeah.
the scale
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And going over it, not just passing it out and saying this is how you're going to be graded, but actually going over all of the different steps and even giving examples of what an excellent um, result would be and what a failing result would be, so that students have it very, very clear in their minds. We want them to succeed, right? We don't want to trick anyone. That's not what we're out to do, right? So by providing some guidance about before they start a project or a presentation about how they can succeed. You help them reach their goals.
All right, then we'll go into the last topic, which is one that we've gotten a lot of questions on, which is feedback. So I guess the one question we've been getting the most is how and when to give feedback on students' oral mistakes.
I think it depends on the student's level again. If you have university students or higher level students, I think it will be discussed with them. When do you want to be, when do you prefer having the feedback, or when do you prefer being interrupted during your conversation, for example, activities, or do you prefer the feedback at the end? What I used to do when I was a teacher, it was if the students had presentation or they had role plays, I used to take notes, and then after taking notes about their main mistakes, I did a feedback for the whole class. Of course, not saying who made the mistake, just saying these were the most common mistakes during your presentations or during your project presentation or during the role play. I think the students would feel better if you present the feedback for all of them at the end of the class or at the beginning of the next class. But I think it will be discussed with them. Some students prefer being interrupted immediately in terms of pronunciation, for example. If they mispronounce a word, they prefer that you interrupt them and say, that's not the pronunciation, this is the pronunciation. But other students, or most of the students, I would say, they prefer being or having the feedback at the end as a general feedback, not as a specific one, not saying the student's name. We should be careful about that, not looking at the learner when you are checking or when doing the feedback. And also through feedback, through permanent feedback, the students understand that a feedback is should be part of the learning process. It's a type of assessment too. And talking about assessment, I would like to go back to the previous topic. It's necessary that the students understand that assessment is part of the learning process. For many years, we were taught that having exams is like having I don't know, like a devil in the classroom. And sometimes the students, we used the test as a way of punishing learners. But actually, evaluation and feedback should be part of the class as part of the learning process, as a tool for learning and improvement.
Something that I would like to say about this is that I think that feedback needs to be given in a timely manner. I would like to say also that correction, I prefer delayed correction, like to wait until an activity or a presentation finishes. I think it is more effective in terms of promoting the development of discourse. No, so feedback should always be present, but we have to be a little bit careful with the correction, with the moment we do it, not to be disruptive with what the students are producing.
Yeah, Lourdes makes the distinction between the purpose of the task being for accuracy or fluency, and that would affect when and how you would
Yes, I was
correct
just
the
going to
error.
say that. Yeah, yeah. So it absolutely depends on what you're practicing um, at the time you are correcting. Yeah, and it depends a lot too on comprehensibility. You don't want to jump in and correct people and nitpick and correct every little thing that they say, but you have to have some criteria yourself for when when do you think it's okay to interrupt and when is it not? And it basically for me is, well, can I understand what this person is trying to say, or is the error so grave or so serious that I should jump in and fix it right away so that they can continue the conversation. But I too use Karina's strategy of writing everything down and putting anonymous mistakes on the board afterward and working together as a group to correct them. And I think that doesn't interrupt them, it doesn't interrupt their fluency, it doesn't embarrass anyone, and I think it's the way to go, especially during fluency practice and conversation.
Yeah, and you address errors as the class errors, not individuals.
Yeah,
no?
exactly.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
We're a little over time, so we'll go to the last question that came up is also on how to give feedback in writing.
The magic rubric. That is the best way to do it.
Yes.
I think there is no better way than a rubric
Absolutely.
in order to provide with feedback and to be fair when correcting or giving the results of a writing piece. Yeah, definitely.
And also being specific about what aspect you are correcting. So
Yes.
it's really sad for the learners when you give them their homework and they see lots of red pen on their paragraphs. I think we should focus. This way we will work on cohesion or coherence or different aspects or just connectors or things like those. And then you focus on that week. So next week you work on other aspects of writing. So every week, because teaching writing, teaching the students how to compose in English is a very long process and a difficult one because most of them, they don't like writing even in their mother tongue. So writing in a different language will be more difficult for them. So we should be careful about checking their pieces of writing and also going little by little and just checking or giving feedback to specific parts of writing, cohesion or coherence or mechanics, spelling, or a different aspect. So not all those aspects that involves writing in one paragraph. That would be really sad for the learner to see that they have lots of mistakes.
I also think it's important when you are correcting writing to give your students the chance to self-correct and not go through and write the correct answer above every mistake they make, but simply underline and give them chances to do multiple drafts and think about what possible errors are. You can use codes or all kinds of different systems to draw your students' attention to the errors that they're making. And yeah, I think simply giving back a paper with lots of red where you've written the correct answer in doesn't really help. It's demoralizing. But saying, underlining things and saying, can you do this again and fix these things? There are errors, there are little mistakes here and here. It gives them a chance to build again their confidence as writers and to become better writers in the end. To examine really, and again, it's these higher level thinking skills to examine and analyze and think about their own learning, this metacognition.
And also peer assessment in writing. I would encourage to do this in the classroom so that the students do not feel, because writing it's an isolated activity, the students do it individually through peer check-ins. So working together would give them the sense of community too. And then this will also give the learners the chance to see their mistakes and maybe see what my mistakes are, what my friends are.
Yeah.
So, and then we work together, we check our mistakes together, so we don't work isolatedly.
And don't take me wrong, I'm not a full advocate of rubrics, but again,
sure.
I just saw what Lourdes Talavera says. Self-correction is great. It is the best way for students to realize their mistakes. I don't think there is a better tool to self-correct a text if there is not a clear rubric. Once again,
Yeah.
if we want our students to develop self-correction in terms of writing, for writing production, I think a rubric is the key tool. That among others, but a rubric is the best one, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are past time, so thank you, panel, for joining us, and thank you for asking questions. And thank you to all of you who sent in your questions, and thank you for joining us. The next RELO Andes webinar will be December 14th. The presenter is Rosadine David. She is an English language fellow as well, joining us from León, Mexico. She's going to be talking about learning objectives, redefining how we evaluate student learning outcomes. So again, that will be Wednesday, December 14th at 3 o'clock Peru time. So we hope you can join us for that. Again, this is coming out of the Regional English Language Office of the U.S. Embassy here in Lima, Peru. You can find us on Facebook if you have not found us already, also on Twitter. As I believe Lisa said, for professional development, all of these webinars are recorded, and the recorded version gets uploaded to our YouTube channel. You can search RELO Andes webinars, and you will find us. If you are not on the mailing list, in order to find out about future events and webinars, you can write to RELO Andes at state.gov, and we will get you everything you need in order to get in touch with us on upcoming events, webinars, anything else that concerns English language programming. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope you can join us next month for our next webinar on learning objectives. Thank you again, panel, and thank you for everyone who joined us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.